Hey guys, Kirkwulf here. I've been on a bit of an Iron Maiden kick recently since I did go ahead and I did see the band live a few weeks ago, and I thought it'd be kind of cool if I did a review of all of the studio albums. So that's exactly what I'm doing today. Now, I'm not reviewing the music, I'm simply reviewing the albums on a scale of 1 through 10, 1 being terrible, 10 being perfect and amazing, based on just the artwork alone. So I will not be taking music into consideration, at least in this video. And as I said, I'm only doing the studio album, so I'm not doing any singles or any miscellaneous or solo works. This is strictly Iron Maiden studio albums starting in 1980. So the first album we have here is the self-titled Iron Maiden from 1980. Now, this album, I think its artwork still holds up fairly well for it being the first and being the oldest. It has this Junji Ito feel. If you're not familiar, he's one of my favorite manga artists that specializes in grotesque horror. And I think they really nailed the look here of Eddie. Now, I will note that I am reviewing the original studio album, not the remaster, which gives him more of that killer's look that he had later on. But I think the album cover still holds up very well. I'd give it an 8 out of 10, mainly because, while it is excellent, some of the background is a bit boring. It looks like Eddie is going for a moonlight stroll, and while Eddie himself captures Iron Maiden, I don't feel like the background of the album does, so solid 8 out of 10. Next album we got here, released in 1981, Killers. Now, as you can see here, it's a bit similar to the one that it came before it, the self-titled album, but they really ramped up everything here. Eddie has more of like a punk rock look than like a scary, horrific monster. And if you look there, you can see he's got an axe with which he is apparently murdering someone, since the album is called Killers. And if you look really closely, you can see the axe is dripping with blood. Eddie has this sick grin of like, oh yeah, I just killed the guy. And while the album is a little bit similar to the one that came before it, I feel like everything about it emphasizes what made the first one great. So I would give Killers a solid 10 out of 10 for really upping the ante from the previous album. Next album we have here is The Number of the Beast, 1982. Using the same design as Eddie from Killers, we see that he looks like he's puppeteering a pretty slick-looking devil dude and spewing smoke and fire everywhere. It looks pretty sick. If I had to rate this album cover, I would give it a 9 out of 10. I initially was going to give it a 10 because, admittedly, this is probably my favorite album, but the devil does look a little bit too cartoonish. I feel like if the devil had that same kind of grin that Eddie has, that more horrifying feature, I'd probably give this album a perfect 10. But I still think the artwork is very nice. It shows what Iron Maiden's about, and it has that cosmic, mystical feel too that Eddie will get later down the road. So, solid 9 out of 10. The next album we have here is Peace of Mind, 1983. Another one of my personal favorite albums, but I do need to admit, the album cover is just okay. I would give this one a solid 7 out of 10. My reasoning for that is, well, I do like the idea of, Eddie or whomever it may be, chained up and trying to break free in this insane asylum. It's just kind of a blanket yellow color. I feel like if the walls were colored and in a different color than yellow, I might appreciate a little bit more. Not to talk about a mobile app here, but there is an Iron Maiden mobile app where this character in that app has electric things coming out and shocking him and stuff. I think that would have been kind of cool if they had that here. But again, not a bad album cover art, but I just feel like it's a little bit bland considering what we've seen before, which was a bit more lifelike and vibrant, but still good. Next up we have 1984's Power Slave. Now I have to admit, this album cover is going to rank a bit lower for me. It does have the standard Eddie face in it, being in that pharaoh next to all behind that pyramid. But the album cover as a whole, it just doesn't scream Iron Maiden to me. If I had to guess, I would have guessed this would have been some sort of pop group, ignoring the skull. The album itself, I do think is phenomenal, but the album cover, it doesn't really capture Iron Maiden for me. So, unfortunately, I would give this one a 3 out of 10. Not the absolute worst, but it just doesn't say Iron Maiden to me. Next up, we have Somewhere in Time, 1986. Now, I'm just going to flat out say, this is another album that I would give a solid 10 out of 10. there's so much going on in this image. So if you look, Eddie has this like cyborg look. He's wielding two pistols. It looks like he just shot another cyborg robot far off in the future. And there's everything going on in the background. If you look closely towards where the moon is, it looks like the city's on fire or something along that. Unless that's just clouds, but it looks like smoke to me. And Eddie looks sick as a cyborg naked hunting robot. It's so much going on, and I just think it is perfect. Solid 10 out of 10. Next up here we have Seventh Son of the Seventh Son, 1988. I've gone back and forth with this album. I wasn't sure if I should rate it high or rate it low, so this is what I was thinking. Not to play off words here, but I would give Seventh Son of the Seventh Son a 7 out of 10. The reason being is that while the background itself looks a bit more glacial, I kind of thought that, it has this bit of like creepy cosmic horror afterlife to it with the glowing floating things behind Eddie, and then, Eddie himself with like his like brain or something coming out, and he's holding, if you look in his left hand, it looks like he's holding some kind of fetus that's like trying to break out of like a womb or something? I don't know. It's pretty creepy when you start to really look into it. So while the album is not as vibrant as some of the other ones, it is certainly a bit more unique. So I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10. Next up here we have No Prayer for the Dying. This album came out in 1990, rolling in the 90s here. And this album cover it's just okay. I'd give it a 5 out of 10. It really doesn't have anything that's necessarily unique, but it doesn't have anything that doesn't necessarily say Iron Maiden. It does have that Eddie look, but he's a bit older with the white hair and he's busting out of the tomb. Not bad, not great, so 5 out of 10. Next here we have Fear of the Dark. This album came out in 1992. Now, Fear of the Dark, again, is an album that I do fancy, and I was going to rate this one a little bit higher, and I tried so hard to not let this bother me, but the logo is sideways, and I'm trying so very hard to not dock it points strictly because of that. But if you look at all the other album covers, it's full art with Iron Maiden on it, either, in small print, or it's see-through, or it's worked into the background. But this is just like slapped on there, going sideways, and it's in all black. If they had continued the picture over with something else besides this creepy monster coming out, spell going from, down up, and maybe it was going from up down, even if it was still sideways, I think that would be a little bit better. Just judging by the artwork, I would, say the artwork itself, solid 8 out of 10 just on the artwork, but the logo does bring it down, I would say, to maybe a 6. I would give it a 6. So, Fear of the Dark, not bad, but I don't know, I just, the sideways logo really does bother me. Next up here we have The X Factor, the 10th studio album coming out in 1995. Now, I see where they were going with this one, but I gotta admit, the weird CG claymation did not age very well. I feel like if this was done in the previous artwork, from Iron Maiden to Fear of the Dark, it would have aged a lot better. I can't imagine anyone looking at this in 95 and going, "Oh, this looks really good." I would give it a 4. I get what they're doing here, the whole like, oh, he's being dissected, aliens or torture or whatever, but it just looks so dumb and cartoony. It's very similar to Power Slave. It just doesn't capture Iron Maiden, but I do see what they were going for, so that's why I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Next up, we have Virtual 11. This one came out in 1998. Now, I like this one. It has a lot going on. I'll give it a solid 8 out of 10. Reasoning for that is the monster design on it is very creepy. I like the whole, like, fire and burning and souls twisting in the background. And I like how it says, Virtual 11, and there's that little kid playing. It looks to be like, a virtual console, very similar to the Virtual Boy. But, of course, I'd assume a little bit better than the Virtual Boy. But, very engaging album. Pretty good for a later Iron Maiden album artwork, so 8 out of 10. Next up, we got Brave New World. Out in the year 2000. I like how Eddie's face is coming out of the clouds. That's pretty cool looking. But I feel like they had a very missed opportunity with the city at the bottom. Now, Brave New World, the book, is, a story about a dystopia. So I guess they were going for a utopia kind of feel with like a perfect city, and Eddie is the storm cloud coming to disrupt it. I like that concept. I would have liked it a bit better if they showed some more destruction coming on, maybe like a lightning bolt burning a building or some fire going around at the bottom. But they don't have any of that. It just looks too perfect. But I see what they were going for with the Eddie coming down as the storm. But that being said, because there's really not much going on that would say Iron Maiden to me except for the clouds, I gotta give this one a 2 out of 10. Next up here we have Dance of Death. This one came out in 2003. Oh boy. Hey, oh dear. This one is this one's bad. This one's bad. Like, at least the one from X Factor still looks pretty good, but this looks like a crappy Gary's Mod, or maybe a very, very poor PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2 game. I guess they were going for this weird, like, sex orgy kind of feel, but the computer-generated graphics just look like crap, if I'm being completely honest. So, yeah, just that Dance of Death, 1 out of 10. It's just awful. Next up we have A Matter of Life and Death, 2006. So, this one is... I see what they were doing here as well. They got this whole army thing with like the skeleton boys and the tanks coming through and the death and destruction lying in their wake. I like the album, but the art just seems kind of bland. Maybe it's because I'm so used to war shooters and first-person shooting games and, war this and war that, because it is currently the year 2019. But the album cover itself just doesn't speak to me like some of the other ones did. But not the worst either. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Next up here we have The Final Frontier. I'm just going to say this right now. Final Frontier, 10 out of 10. This album cover is just kick-ass. Everything about Iron Maiden that they have done well in the past, they got perfectly, once again, on this album here. We've got the skulls of these astronauts. We've got this giant mutated alien Eddie who looks like he's like bleeding with damage, and if you see space in the background and it's vast and empty. Truly an amazing piece of art. I love this one. I also like how on each of their spacesuits looks like a claw mark that the alien Eddie had finished them off with. So, Final Frontier, 10 out of 10. And funny because the album itself came out in 2010. And lastly, from the Iron Maiden studio albums, we have The Book of Souls. Now, this album here came out in 2015. Another one where it's just like... It's just okay. Like, it's not bad, it's not great. But there's nothing going on. Like, at least with every single other Iron Maiden album, there was something going on in the background. Like, it wasn't just blank space for the most part. Seventh Son of the Seventh Son had kind of a blank space. But this one is literally just a guy. He looks like a cannibal kind of dude. Maybe from, like, the Green Inferno or Cannibal Holocaust or something like that. Spooky tribesman that probably eats people. I don't know. But this Eddie is just kind of boring. The closer you get to it, it looks like he's like blood coming out of his mouth and that he's like covered in blood and ash or something. But it's just... blech. Again, just not very interesting, and especially looking from The Final Frontier, it's just so good, and then Book of Souls' cover art is just so meh. I'll give this one a 3 out of 10. It's just not that good. And so this has been a review of all of the Iron Maiden studio albums. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little review of all the Iron Maiden albums. I'll be making some more content, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys so much for watching.